This is Dr. Flight. I hope you're doing great today. This is a recap or an overview, if you will, of the module that focuses on competing through the marketing mix. So in marketing, there's been a model that's been around for an extremely long time, about 70 years, called the four P's. Four P's include the product that's being created or offered to the market, the price, which is assigned to the product that the consumer pays, promotion or building awareness and communication of the product, and then the fourth P is for distribution, which would be, place, sorry, place, which would be distribution or bringing the product to the market, to the consumer, getting it to them, delivering the product. And so in this course, we've been focusing a lot on strategy, how the firm um, creates a competitive advantage, how they position themselves, how they view themselves from a mission or purpose perspective, and how that all translates into the value they ultimately deliver to the marketplace. And ultimately, though, the doing of marketing, so there's a thinking and a planning component of marketing. That's where largely where we stay when we're talking about strategy. But when we transition from that, we go to a doing phase. The functional phase of marketing, if you will, deals with actually executing plans and actually doing the stuff that fulfills the strategy that we're really working on. And so when we talk about the four P's, they largely fall in the doing portion of the marketing world. So when people say, "Oh, we want to market this product," or "we want to do marketing," 99% of the time, what they're talking about is building awareness, getting the product out into the market, creating sales, making sure people are aware of the product, letting them know that it exists, and things like that. And those are all part of the marketing mix, the doing phase of marketing. Now, 99% of people think that's what marketing is exclusively, and in reality, yeah, those things are all important, but they are only a fraction of the things that we actually do in marketing. So in this module, we very, very briefly talk about three of these four P's. In another module, we look at product and product development. But in this module, we do some price models. We look at pricing a little bit, some of the traditional models that are based um, on demand-based pricing, like the demand curve. Then we do some other models that are strictly cost-based, and those are kind of the typical things that you're going to see when people do pricing, a cost-based model, and then some people nowadays we do dynamic pricing, which is largely demand-based, which is interesting. Some auction pricing and some things like that. So pricing again, how we assign value, I guess, in a currency sense to our value proposition is it's something that we do. We obviously are heavily involved with what the market will bear, what our competitors are charging, and some things like that. So again, that's kind of that. The next thing we look at, or another thing we look at then, is the communication process, where we want to build awareness. There's lots of different models. The AIDA model, for instance, where we want to get somebody's attention, get them interested in the product, walk them through the sales product process where they make a decision, and then accept the product, or some after purchase experience where we're communicating information the whole time. So, but communication, building awareness, media, all the things that we do deal with. That would include social media. That would include getting information out to the public about our product. Lots of different tools are involved with that. And again, that's what most people in the world would think of first when they think of marketing. They would think of communications. And again, that is an important part, but it's only one very, very small part of marketing that gets a lot of buzz. The the third area then would deal with this idea of distribution. And distribution, uh, again, the getting the product up and down a supply chain, or a distribution channel, thinking about multiple ways the product can get to the customer through multi-channel approaches, the value that's created across a channel or a supply chain is something that we look at heavily as well. Managing the supply chain or managing the channel, channel captains, who your partners will be, who will distribute the product. There's a million different questions you could ask that are associated with channel design and distribution supply chain issues. So really, this one module captures three enormously big concepts in a pretty brief way. So that's what the videos are going to be a lot. We could spend, again, 2 or 3 courses, semester-long courses in these topics in this module. So we don't really have the luxury of doing that. But again, this is a strategy class. There's the execution of strategy that gets embedded in all of these areas, is something that we might want to talk about. From a larger or from a broader perspective, one of the an underlying concept which I bring out a lot in this course is this idea of value co-creation. And it's a good area to bring this out in, because again, this is like a strategy, kind of a higher level thinking in terms of how we're going to apply this. Value co-creation is a concept that really emerged in the turn of the century in 2010s or 2000s, I guess, in academic literature. But it's this concept that when you create a product, the product really doesn't have any value until a customer uses it. And when the customer uses a product, value is then created or exercised. So we call this co-creation. So the firm does its job in producing a product, and the customer does its job by using the product, and the two of them together co-create value. The value is a symbiotic outcome of the firm and the customer both doing their roles together in order to see the results of whatever that product could do. So sometimes, you can use any type of illustration. A company can produce a pencil, but the pencil just sits there until a person picks it up and starts using it to draw. And then they draw and they create a beautiful picture or a sketch using the device of the pencil, but without the person using it, the picture's never created. It just sits there. The firm didn't create the outcome. The customer and the firm together created the outcome. So value was then co-created. Now you have this beautiful sketch. But without the two working together, you would never have had that outcome. So value co-creation then is something that again, it's this underlying philosophy that when you're creating value for the marketplace, you have to keep in mind that it's not you creating the value, it's you and the user creating the value in concert with each other. So again, this is one of those things, and we see the execution of value co-creation in the 4 Ps, in how the product is brought to the market, in the product development itself, how it's priced, and so on and so forth. So again, this is a good area to talk about and wrap up with this idea of value co-creation. I think it's important to have that discussion, that conversation when you think about moving forward in whatever field you work in. This idea that whatever work you create, whatever value you create, is being used by somebody else. So, if you have that perspective of how the product will be used, then it'll help you create better products, better solutions to people's problems. Okay, so now there's a whole bunch of questions that you can answer relating to this module. And there's a lot because they get broken down into pricing questions, distribution questions, and communication questions for the most part. Many of these questions can be answered through the lecture videos, some through the text. But again, you want to be thinking about how the four P's maybe work together. And then on top of that, I love the idea of pulling in value co-creation as a theory or a model, I guess, to also drive some of your decision making when you're a CMO, when you're a chief marketing officer. Okay, so lots of little things to read about. Again, this chapter, this module, we could cover lots and lots of ground here. And again, we could spend an entire degree of study on all of these, which is interesting. I mean, there are supply chain degrees, supply chain management disciplines. There's obviously communication, journalism, mass communication, social media. Those are all degrees. Those are large enough of areas to have degrees in. So they're important. But in the context of marketing, they're really the tools we use to get our strategy done. That's a bigger picture, and that's what differentiates a business marketing space from these other spaces. Is we want to think of these as tools to achieve the strategic goals that we've designed and thought of up to this point. So I hope this is interesting to you. I hope you come away with some new ideas and some new perspectives. That's what the whole point is, I think, of working through a lot of this material. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.